Welcome to Screaming on the Inside with me, Celeste. Today is a bonus interview episode. Thank you so much for joining us. Today, I'll be speaking with the lovely Tom, who has taken some time out of his day to share his recovery experience with us. Hi, Tom. Thanks so much for joining us today.
Hi, Celeste. It's lovely to be here. Thank you for asking me.
Thank you. Pleasure. So just to start things off, I wonder if you might be able to tell us a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, certainly. So I basically came into recovery. I've just checked now. I'm 4 years, 10 months, and 24 days today.
Wow, well done.
My recovery started in Liberty House in Luton, and I was 28 when I came into recovery. I'm 33 now. I live a fairly busy lifestyle, I guess. Now I've got 4 children who are 6 and younger. I always, when I share in meetings, sort of mention that I can't drink, but I can reproduce. That's for sure. But yeah, so they keep me pretty active, and I work from home, I work remotely, and I've got just a wonderful life today. Truth be told.
Oh, that sounds amazing. It really does. And having kids and being able to sort of have that journey with them in recovery must be really quite something.
Yeah, definitely. My eldest 2, they were here when I was still in the madness, for sure. But thankfully for me, they were too young to remember. But to have my 2 youngest kind of in sobriety and being present today, being with them, part of their lives it's one of the gifts that kind of keeps on giving every single day.
Absolutely.
Amazing.
Absolutely. That sounds fantastic. And well done on your, say 4 years, did you say? 4 years? That's absolutely fantastic. Well done.
5 in February, a day at a time, but 5 in February the 25th is my sober birthday. So.
Fantastic. Not a day you forget, is it? Your sober birthday, for sure. No. I've got mine etched in my mind. I think we're quite similar ages as well. I'm in my mid-30s, and right. I sometimes worry that I didn't do it soon enough, but actually we've still got so much life ahead of us, and all of these beautiful milestones that you talk about, having kids and watching them grow up and doing that in sobriety. It really is such a gift, and you should be very, very proud of yourself for giving yourself that opportunity. So I think a lot of people, you've kind of just said it yourself, a lot of people worry that a life in recovery can be quite limiting or even boring and feel that they're missing out. Have you got any things that you have done or experiences that you've had since being in recovery that, you wouldn't have done if it weren't for your sobriety?
It's a good question, to be fair. I think by the time I kind of came into recovery, I wasn't someone who thought I was an alcoholic. That was my poison. And although I kind of had drugs throughout the kind of entire career of being in the madness, I always sort of say or class alcohol as being king. But when I came into recovery, it wasn't myself who put me there. I was put there by kind of an intervention. So it took a little while for me to kind of get my head around the fact that I was even in this situation. And it took a while for me to kind of, I guess, readjust on the outside of the rehab bubble. But there's been a number of things, to be honest. It's taken a little while, and I was cautious to begin with about wet places and so on, as they sort of suggest that you are. But having come from a hospitality background, I've worked in hospitality for 10 years. I drank for 10 years. Go gather. It kind of went hand in hand. That it allowed me to kind of start again. I always sort of see it as a second chance at life, and by having an understanding that I was an alcoholic, and that I had this problem and this sort of disease that centered in my mind, the acceptance around that, which I thankfully got quite early on, kind of during that period of the 6 weeks I was in rehab, the acceptance around that really kind of was a massive weight off my shoulders, and it allowed me to kind of really focus on, right, this is the work that needs to be done. These are the suggestions I'm being told. Now I need to kind of go out and do it, And since being in recovery, as I mentioned, I've had 2 more children who are just fantastic, and I can be there for my older ones as well. One of the big things that's kind of standing out for me in terms of what I've been able to do in sobriety, I got married in the madness to my wife. We met in Greece. We went back to Greece to get married, and there was a lot of people mentioning about, or apparently talking to her, saying that, are you sure you want to marry this guy? Friends of mine and friends of hers, and because my behaviour was unacceptable. I disappeared for a few days at a time, and I was, we was all inclusive, and I was just permanently pissed, basically. But
Right.
a lot of people questioning that, and she did thankfully go through with it. And one thing I've been able to do in recovery, we went back to Greece for a friend of ours' wedding, and I managed to organise that I was to renew my vows to my wife at the same spot where we got married. And we'd only been married about 2 or 3 years, so it's quite a quick thing to do, renewing your vows at that point in time. But it was an opportunity that I couldn't miss, and it was a chance for me to kind of really prove to her and say to her again that I meant what I said the first time round.
Yeah.
Even if I couldn't remember it at the time.
It's Tom's version 2.0, right?
Yeah. Basically.
That's wonderful. I mean, and so much must have changed, like you say. It's not a particularly long amount of time, those 2 years, but so much must have changed. And like you say, it is very much, I always look at my recovery almost like a rebirth, and
100%.
Absolutely. And you can only really ever go through that process unless you completely surrender to your addiction and do the work, accept the advice you're given, and basically do what you're told. Basically, because our way isn't working, right? So we've got to do it another way. Yeah, it's really interesting. And hospitality, gosh, what an area to work in. I think I meet a lot of people with drug and alcohol issues who actually work in hospitality. I wonder if a little bit of is part of the lifestyle around the work. So yeah, kudos to you for sure. I think for myself, quite similar to you, actually. I think once I surrendered and really grasped the fact that I needed the program that was being offered to me, it was pretty quick from there. The changes were quite quick and quite profound. It was almost like a complete re-beginning. I think for me, it's self-confidence that I have now. I'm really engaged with people around me. I think obviously mental health has improved hugely. I have bipolar disorder, actually, and that was quite profoundly impacted by my drinking and drugging. And I'll always have bipolar, but it's something that I don't have to sort of worry about managing so much, because I'm just on an even keel. And you've got a wonderful family and a wonderful marriage, and I think for me personally, it's been my job at UKAT. I wouldn't be able to work here and work with other wonderful people who are also working through their own recovery. So that's just been an absolute blessing. Anyway, I could go on for hours about all of these highlights of recovery. But, moving forward, I think, sober lifestyle it is becoming a cultural norm. I think there's much more of a movement now towards living life sober. For those who are in and out, in or out of addiction, you don't necessarily have to be an addict to want to live the sober lifestyle. And I think it can generate some odd reactions from, first dates, in my case, friends, strangers, family members. Have you ever had any weird or funny reactions when you've sort of had to, told someone that you're in sobriety? How has that sort of worked for you?
Yeah, no, definitely. I mean, I'm kind of an age, I guess, and especially when I kind of came into recovery, that a lot of my friends were getting married. It was kind of that age group, and there was marriages, and there was stag do's and so on and so forth. And depending on the circumstances, depending on who it is asking the question, then I will either just say straight out that I'm in recovery. I'm not particularly precious about keeping it to myself, because I think it can do a lot of people a lot of good by knowing someone who's gone through that process. And but there have been occasions, and there's times where the perhaps social invitations might falter a little bit, because I think, well, he's not going to want to come anyway because he's not drinking.
Right.
Which sometimes might be the case, and sometimes it might not be. But what? I always, and I do AA as a way to kind of keep my recovery going. And I always share in the rooms, and there's nothing that's gonna trump being sober today by being put in a situation I don't want to be in. And my trump card is that I haven't picked up a drink today. I'm not consumed by that madness and the isolation through choice that for me, I had a busy life in the madness with 2 kids and a wife and a job and so on. But I was isolating through choice. I didn't want to be immersed in that environment. And, as long as everyone else was being catered for and looked after, I was quite happy on my sofa with my drink, and I couldn't give a shit about anything else, to be honest. No. So it takes a lot for me to think, I'm going to put myself in a position to take that away from me now.
Absolutely. Yeah, I don't know about you, Tom, but the invites, social events, I instinctively know whether it's an invite that I should be accepting or not. I had one yesterday, a good friend of mine, it's their 40th birthday, they're doing a wine tour. Now I am not going on a wine tour. There is nothing there for me. So whereas before, I don't know how I would have managed it before. Probably not very well. I probably would have gone and done the thing. But this time I just politely said, thank you so much for the invite. It's very kind of you, but I don't think a wine tour is for me. Have fun. And I got off the chat. And it was, had it been an event, I think where, I don't know about you, but I still like going out. Very rarely, but, I went out at the weekend. I took myself to a metal gig. And there was booze everywhere, but I could be in that wet space, as we call it, and not feel at risk. I didn't feel that my sobriety was at risk. And I also know that if ever there was if there was a time where you're feeling a little bit more vulnerable, perhaps, it's just knowing how to protect your sobriety and putting that first, isn't it, really? And like you say, your trump card is you haven't had a drink.
Definitely.
And as long as we get to bed and wake up the next day without having had a drink or a drug or whatever our substance or behavioural issue is, that's the priority.
100%. And a good kind of example from what I do now, I don't work in hospitality anymore, I work in IT, and the majority of the last year, a particular project I've been working on has been literally in whiskey distilleries. In Scotland, I've been going up to Scotland back and forth, and the site for the installation that we've been doing they've been distilleries. I've been working. There's been bottles. There's been samples offered, and so on. And I don't know whether if I was a year or less, or 2 years or 3 years into my sobriety, that I would go on those jobs. I'd have to find a reason, or where I work now, my colleagues and some of my superiors know my situation. I've told them that. But there was an occasion when I was up at one of these distilleries last year, and I went with two colleagues who were drinking quite heavily. And that's their prerogative. I don't mind that. These two particular colleagues don't know that I'm in recovery. But I just removed myself, and at the time I was doing a lot of Zoom meetings, so I'd go upstairs. I've got a meeting I've got to be on. I don't need to really elaborate further than that. I can log on to the meeting wherever it was in the world, and for that hour and a half, hour and 15 minutes, I've got peace of mind again. And I can right size the situation and reassess. And if I need to speak to someone from the rooms, or speak to my sponsor, or speak to my wife, then I've got that as an option as well. It's nice to have the toolbox, as they say, and the tools.
That's what, I use the word toolbox all the time. I've got a little box, and you can reach into that box and take out what you need at that time to help you get you through, either whether it's, that minute, that hour, that day. And I think a lot of us in recovery have very similar things in our toolbox. I really like that you've used that sort of word, because I think that if you can visualize a literal toolbox and pick out the things that you need, I think that can be really, really helpful. Like you say, meetings, thank goodness for Zoom. I mean, where would we be without it? It's been transformative having Zoom, having, a sponsor, if you have a sponsor, or a mentor, friends, family, if you're an alumni member, you've got us you can reach out to, we're part of that toolbox. And it's just knowing what to do, and also knowing, like you said, you don't owe people an explanation. You don't have to tell them every war story or every reason for you needing to tap out. I think that's really important, that you don't owe anyone an explanation or a reason for you protecting your interests and your recovery. It's as we know, that getting sober, it's just the beginning of recovery. I think you would know from being in the rooms that we're all encouraged to sort of work by looking inwards and work on our character defects over time. It's not an overnight process, you know. I mean, you've already hit on this a little bit, but would you say there are any particular changes in your personality or the way you cope with the world? You know, maybe you could tell us a little bit more about that and how it's improved your life.
Yeah, definitely. The sort of glaringly obvious one for me is I used to have crazy anger. Like I used to go from 0 to 100 very quickly, and quite often for no particular reason whatsoever. And regrettably, you know, having young children, a lot of it was stemmed from them just not doing what I wanted them to do. And you know, they could be a year old to, you know, 5, 6. They're kids at the end of the day, you know. And I just couldn't understand or process the fact that they are children, and I'd blow my top, you know, and it'd be crazy. And being in recovery, and I did sort of some outside work around my anger, as in I sort of saw a counsellor specifically for that reason, and we kind of talked about it for a little while, and I found myself, you know, in these meetings, and a lot of the program was kind of coming through in terms of what I was talking about. And I'm in a place now where, I'm not going to lie, I still can get angry about certain situations, but I'm very quick to check myself. Very quick to check myself, and I think I can, you know, honestly say that I don't shout like I used to. If I do kind of go crazy for a particular instance, and I can take a step back, I can take a breath, and I can go back and apologise to my child or my children or whoever it is that I've done, I've blown up at, because it's generally not their fault, or sometimes they just need to understand why that's made me cross, or why they can't be doing a certain thing. And that's what recovery has given me, and that's a kind of specific example, but it was a big one for me, was my anger. You know, it's allowed me to check my actions and check my behaviour and my character defects, and look at my part to play. As we hear in the rooms, you know, what's my part to play in this situation or this scenario? And the ability and what recovery has given me, and the program's given me by going through the steps, it's allowed me to look at that and really analyse, you know, how did I behave in that situation? It's not always the other person. And yeah, that's probably the best example I could probably give you.
I think it's an amazing example, to be honest. I mean, it captures so much of what, you know, of how amazing recovery can be. It's having, you know, first of all, it's acceptance, isn't it? You know, definitely. It is the answer to all of our problems today. And, you know, not feeling that you have to control everything, you know, and being accountable for your behaviours and your reactions, and being able to pause, take a step back, and then apologise where apologies is due. And I'm doing my step 4 at the moment, so right. I know all about, you know, looking at your part to play in a situation. It's so funny. You go into a resentment, you know, you're like, oh God, it's like, well, yeah, they might have done 10 things that were upsetting, or, you know, but I still had a part to play in that, and it's just letting that go. I think I'm quite similar to you. Before I came into recovery, I was a very angry person. I was holding on to so much, and you know, recovery has really allowed me to be in the moment, be grateful. Gratitude is a huge part of my journey, and yeah, I really relate. As we say that, don't we? A lot of relate there. A lot. But yeah, I really do. And I think again, you know, you're talking about having kids, you know, having your two younger kids, you know, for them to have a dad that can be accountable for his behaviours and sort of anger management. Yeah. I mean, I don't know how I would cope with one child, let alone
I don't know how
multiple children. Oh gosh, no, thank you. But yeah, it's amazing. It really is. I think for me also, when I was in the midst of my addiction, I was very isolated. I think you said earlier, Nat, you know, you choose to isolate yourself sometimes, but that's as a benefit. You know, it's a good thing to do sometimes, to take yourself away from certain situations. Whereas, you know, I don't know about you, but I was really isolated emotionally and physically throughout the worst of my addiction. On that topic, I did want to, if I may, bring our listeners to the attention of a campaign. that Mind and Rethink Illness are running. It's called Time to Talk. The day for this is the 3rd of February, and it's run every year, and the day is about creating supportive communities by having conversations with friends, family or colleagues about mental health. As we know, we all have mental health, and by talking about it, we can support ourselves and others. It's particularly important in recovery, I think, to have these conversations. So all of you out there listening, have a think about how you can have a conversation about mental health in your communities, whether it be with your friends, your families, within your recovery community, and get talking. We'll have some more information in our newsletter about how you can perhaps partake with this and follow the campaign. On that topic, Tom, have you sort of found that you've been able to open up about your mental health and your addiction throughout your recovery? Where have you been able to do that, and how has it helped you?
Yeah, no, definitely. I think for me, I mean, the start of that kind of whole process for me, and as I say, I do AA, and the rooms for me are a vital part of my recovery. They are, I've always done 4 meetings a week minimum, unless there's been other commitments, but I still today do 4 meetings a week. Because it's an outlet for me, and that started with Liberty House, and the sheer kind of ease that I had from being in there with other people with like-minded thinking, and the group work and the group sessions that we did. I think, luckily for me, quite quickly I realised, this is a safe space to share this stuff, and doing the meetings that I do now. I went to a men's meeting for the first time the other day. So I just do whatever meetings in my local area, but I went to a men's meeting, and it still today blows me away at how honest people are in the rooms. They can be sharing stuff that, for me might be on my step 4, for example, and they're sharing it openly in a meeting because there's something inside them. They've been around the rooms long enough, or they've taken on board a suggestion that by getting it out and sharing it, it kind of takes the power out of what you're keeping inside. And a lot of it is mental health, and I particularly use drink to kind of numb the pain, or to kind of get over a fear, or to change the way I felt. But remove the drink, I'm left with myself, and by having the rooms and an outlet to share stuff that I just don't understand, that I'm scared of and fearful of, or is confusing me, it's something that's irreplaceable, and more often than not, and again, the kind of reassuring factor is that I could share something that I think only I've ever done, or it's only me who thinks this way, and then all of a sudden 3 or 4 people are sharing back, and someone's talking to me after the meeting, and I'm like, as if it's not just me. I'm not special and different, but there's actually people out there who are willing to help and to learn and to listen. I'm a massive advocate for the meetings,
Oh yeah, no, absolutely. It's such a wonderful space, isn't it? I always say, I found my people in the rooms, and it doesn't matter what their substance is or who they are, where they come from. You sit in a meeting, and there might be a middle-aged straight man sitting at the front of the meeting, and I'm like, well, what are they going to have to say that I'm going to relate to? And then they start talking, and it's like, oh my God. Who would have thought, if you put us next to each other in a room, there's no way you'd think we would have so much in common. But it can be, any number of things. It can be our war stories, it can be our upbringing. I find upbringing is often quite a big thing, where you're like, well, you were brought up in a similar way to me, we both had alcoholic parents, or it is just fascinating. And it's very much what they say is, you can take away so much of the similarities. Yes, there are differences, but there are always similarities. And for me, I always find it really powerful when I see people who in society might usually be quite reluctant to talk about their feelings, so men are a big risk of suicide and mental health problems because they don't talk. And I love the rooms for that. I love that it's a safe space for everybody to say what they want, and it doesn't matter what you hear, and nothing shocks me anymore,
No,
and I think, for anyone who is, maybe a bit not reluctant, but, hasn't caught caught onto the program, or has, misgivings, or a lot of people can be put off the program. I would just encourage you to go with an open mind, sit back, relax and listen. and take it from there. And I love the fact that you're still doing 4 meetings a week. That's really good. And again, you can become quite comfortable in your recovery, but I think there's a big difference between being comfortable and complacent. Sorry, Tom, please go.
No, I was just going to say, I mean, I think, my circumstance, I guess, is probably, I'm lucky that my wife allows me to do the 4 meetings. She knows that, and she also knows that, AA comes first before her and the kids, because without AA, or without recovery rather, I don't have them anyway. And I do 4 meetings a week because it's my comfort zone. And what I was going to say is that, in my time of being in recovery and in fellowship, the people that I've seen who have relapsed are those who have stopped coming to meetings. And a prime example is my first sponsor. He was 18 months in the rooms, and I was just coming about, and we were kind of going through the steps and so on. And then something happened. He stopped coming to meetings. He dropped off. He ultimately relapsed, and he's now no longer with us as a result of not being able to come back into the rooms. And I don't, I'm not going to say this was the reason or that was the reason, but I know he stopped going to meetings, and that, to be honest, scares the shit out of me.
Yeah,
it absolutely scares the shit out of me, because I've seen it too many times. That's one example. There's plenty of people around you. They say about getting a good black suit because you'll have to wear it. I don't want to be that person,
No.
And I'm comfortable and there are times where maybe if I go on holiday, I might seek out a meeting, but I'm there to spend time with family or otherwise. But it's knowing it's there, and like you said, I think it's willingness. It's willingness and action. And I quite often share, to get my bum on a seat for an hour or an hour and a half to trade the other 23 hours outside of the meeting. Fair swap, I'll take that.
Yeah, I mean, wow, that's really powerful. I mean, you're no use to anyone if you're back out there, or what, even worse, and it can be a difference between life and death. And I know it sounds like a bit hyperbolic, but actually that's the truth. I always think about, myself, is if I went back out there, I might last another few years, but the ending is inevitable. And like you say, I'd rather prioritize meetings and say to my partner, I'm not around on this night, or I'm doing this, that, and the other for my recovery, because if I'm in recovery and I'm well, then I am a valuable person for you to have in your life. I'm nice to be around. I'm pleasant to be around. I'm, participating, and I'm able to be there for my friends and my family. So I think, yeah, absolutely. And again, we should never apologize, for putting that first. And I'm glad we're talking about the 12-step program. I mean, just to be clear, we don't advocate one program over another. We do have other options for people coming into treatment, but we do find that a lot of people find that the 12-step program, so AA, NA, CA, they work really well for people. Would you have any sort of specific advice for anyone who is perhaps curious but reluctant? I think you said earlier you got it pretty much straight away, but how was that AA experience been for you? Perhaps you could tell us particularly about the early days, maybe your first year, what that was like.
I took on board the suggestions from the counsellor who I was assigned to, I guess, in rehab, and he was someone who was in the fellowship, he was in CA, but as I said, like, alcohol was king, and that's what brought me to my knees. So I was actively seeking out the meetings around my local area. And I remember I got discharged from Liberty House on a Friday, and with all this kind of suggestions on board and very much at the forefront of my mind, I went to a meeting that night, and I sat there and I didn't really know what to make of it. I'm kind of like, I'm fresh meat kind of thing, like, or wide-eyed and so on. But I distinctly remember that with having lost my job through being suspended from drinking on shift, I had a period of time, it ended up being roughly about a month, that I had no work commitment. So I was fully just invested in throwing myself into these programs, and it was the second meeting that I went to. I didn't go on the Saturday, I went on the Sunday, and it was at the second meeting that I bumped into 3 other men who were in my early days, and for the first year, were instrumental in keeping me coming back, and they say about us, the newcomer is the most important person in the room, and these 3 guys all gave me their phone numbers. One of them I still see regularly today. The other one was my sponsor, who ended up, relapsing and leaving. leaving us, and another one I know still does the rooms, but they were people who reached out to me and were of, some of them were a few months ahead of me, some of them were a bit longer, but they knew the message that was passed on to them was to help the newcomers. And my advice, I guess, and my suggestion would be to just, if you're curious, go to a meeting, but don't take that particular meeting as the precedence for every meeting that's available in your area, because there's all sorts for every single person. I can take a home group, for example, and some weeks it's not the best meeting. It might be for whatever reason, maybe I'm off kilter a little bit, but the next week it could be the best meeting under the sun. And that would be my suggestion. Don't take one example of going to a meeting as a representation of the entire program. And for me, I kept going to meetings. I got familiar. I started to see faces that I knew from elsewhere. I didn't drive. I still don't drive, so I was a little bit reliant on people very kindly offering me lifts. By doing that, I was talking to people. I got to know them a little bit better. And it was the sense of familiarity, very much like it was in Liberty House. It was the familiar. It was the same people, same faces, sharing their story, sharing the message, and there was camaraderie that went with it, which again was instrumental. It's the feeling of not being alone, which was 100% the foundation to making me feel comfortable in my local area. I live in Surrey. In my local area, to feel like, I can do this. And over time that network's grown. I've met people from all kinds of fellowships and all walks of life that put me out there in a normal situation in the normal world I'd never have bumped into. But today I am, and I call a friend. So
that's fantastic. I had a very, very similar experience to you, and I've made some wonderful, wonderful friends in the rooms. And like we were saying earlier, they're not people that you'd necessarily put me with, but they've just become, so important in my life. And I really value their friendship and their persistence in getting me to come back. And actually, I might take your advice. It's really funny you brought up the sort of inconsistencies with meetings, because my home group is usually absolutely fantastic. And I hadn't been for a little while because I was settling into my new job. I was doing some Zooms instead, and I went back to my home group meeting. It's in Soho in London, and I just wasn't feeling it. I just wasn't, and I thought, oh God, what's wrong with it? What's wrong? It was me. I was just having an off day, and I went back the week after, and it was great, and everything clicked again. So you can have bad meetings, but just persevere. I was like it when people say, if you don't want to go to a meeting, that means you need to go to a meeting. Keep going until you want to go. No one said it was going to be easy, but it is absolutely worth it. And thank you so much for your insight, Tom. I think, as I've said, I do like to reiterate that everyone should have agency over their recovery and over their journey, and what works for some people might not work for others. But I am in the rooms myself, and it saved my life, and it continues to work for me as long as I continue to work it. But it doesn't really matter at the end of the day. Whatever program you have, as long as you do the work, don't pick up that drink or substance, then take what works for you and leave the rest. And I think we say it again and again, but that's basically the bottom line. Tom, it's been an absolute pleasure speaking with you today. I wonder if there was, I think you've given us so much to think about already, but have you got sort of a mantra, or the one thing that you keep close to your heart in recovery? What's the one thing that you sort of live by now on a day-to-day basis?
Yeah, I mean, there's probably a couple of things. I mean, one of the early things that I held on to when I was fresh, and I've heard 1,000 times since, is to just keep it in the day. It's very, you hear it everywhere in the rooms. Just keep it in the day. And when I heard it, I was like, what the hell do you mean? But it has helped me even today. If I've been for like a job interview or something which I had recently, or I've done something, if I just keep it in that moment, not even necessarily the day, just in that moment, and let things are going to work out how they're going to work out. As long as I'm doing the next right thing, then I've given myself the best chance. And in terms of a mantra, I don't know, it's a bit cheesy as well, but and applicable to not even just AA, but just recovery. But it kind of goes in terms of an AA perspective. If I put AA first in my life, everything I put second becomes first class. And that has been true 100 times over. 100 times over for me. You know, I come from a place that I was 24/7 drinking. The wife and kids left me. I'd lost my job, and I was 28 and I was in fucking rehab. That wasn't the life plan for me. It's stark contrast to what I've got today. I'm 33. I've got a roof over my head. I've got my wife and 4 children. I've got a job that I love, and I go to meetings regularly, and I do what's suggested. You know, I put in the action. And the most rewarding thing that I've done recently, in terms of my recovery, is where I live in particular. I've recently started a meeting on a Sunday morning. It's a new meeting to AA, and it was, you know, started in September, and it's been one of the most rewarding things for me that I've been able to do. And to kind of add to that, what I didn't expect when I started the meeting was that a local rehab close to me, their clients are coming to the meeting. As a result, you know, it's close to where they're based, and they got into contact with me and said, you know, would you mind? The particular meetings, an open meeting, so we have people with alcohol problems or addiction or eating disorders, and to me, it's just a safe space. You know, it's a safe space that they can come. The addiction that centers in the mind is a commonality, and there's a ease and comfort that comes from sitting in a room around people who talk and think in a similar way. And that to me has been the most rewarding thing that I've been able to do in my short time in recovery, you know, and I fucking love it.
You know, but it's giving back. It's giving back, isn't it? You know, it's the only way we help ourselves, by helping another alcoholic or addict. And we don't do it for, you know, just so we can get a gold medal. I don't know about you. I do it because I would want that myself. I needed that myself, and it's just so wonderful to be able to give that back. And I think it's amazing that you've got that, you know, connection now with being able to help other people coming into the rooms. Well done, Tom. That's fantastic.
Thank you. It's just been a bit of a whirlwind, really. I know, like, you know, four and a bit years, but I've just done what was suggested. I think a big part was being made to feel comfortable when I was in Liberty House, and my counsellor helped me do that, and the other people there who are alongside me. But I think it has to come from within. You know, recovery, whatever means you use to kind of get sober or stay off your addiction, it has to kind of start with you, and then the benefits will just come back to you. Yeah.
Brilliant. No, couldn't agree more, Tom, and thank you so much for your time with us today. I think there's going to be a lot here for our wonderful listeners to take from what you've said, and, you know, if I may come back to you on sort of a simple mantra. I've got a couple that I kind of keep in my mind. First one is keep it simple, keep it in the day. I think most people try and stick to that, and it really is important to appreciate that. You know, somebody once said to me, if you've got one hand holding on to the future and one arm like in the past trying to hold on to that, you've got nothing left to grab the present with. And I love that analogy, and it really makes me think that, you know, we've got to, you know, make the most of what we have in front of us. And also this might help someone, is, you know, don't do other people's thing. What other people think of you is none of your business, right? Don't do other people's thinking for them. You do you, and let other people do themselves, because chances are they don't really care. Right? It's this whole thing of like the whole world revolves around us, right? Yeah. It really doesn't. Sorry, but it doesn't. But on that, thanks again, Tom. Hopefully we'll be able to catch up again some point in the future, and you can let us know how you're getting on. So you've been listening to Screaming on the Inside with me, Celeste. Before I go, when I think about the subject of opening up about mental health, as we've been discussing today, a word that comes to mind for me is that of vulnerability. I'd like to finish with a quote from the wonderful Brené Brown and leave it with you to think about. Loving ourselves through the process of owning our story is the bravest thing we will ever do. So there you go. That's my little tidbit for today. Everyone, take care out there. And remember, if you do need support with addiction, you can find lots of information and contact points for us at ukat.co.uk. That's ukat.co.uk. You can also follow our Facebook page by searching for UKAT, UKAT in Facebook. Take care, everybody. And Lee and I will be back with another podcast in February. Thank you.